Okay, today we're talking about multiplying mixed numbers, topic 11-3. So far this week we have multiplied fractions by whole numbers, fractions by fractions, and now we're going to take it one step further and learn how to multiply fractions by mixed numbers. I just want to show you on this first slide, I've chosen a problem 1 2/3 times 3 3/8. And in order to multiply mixed numbers, this is very different from adding mixed numbers. Before we can even multiply, we have to change these into improper fractions. So if you remember how to do that, you make it mad. Multiply, add denominator. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So this fraction would be 5/3 times 8 times 3 is 24, plus 3 is 27. And denominators never change. Okay, let's use the strategy that we learned yesterday on reducing or cross-canceling. So when I look at 5 and 8, there's nothing that goes into 5 and 8 other than 1, so I can't do anything there. Let's look at these cross numbers, 3 and 27. I know that 3 goes into both of those, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 27 divided by 3 is 9. Now we can multiply. 5 times 9 is 45. And 1 times 8 is 8. So 45/8 is our answer. We don't want to leave it this way. We want to put it back into a mixed number. So to change an improper fraction to a mixed number, remember we ask ourselves, how many times does 8 go into 45? And it goes 5 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Takes 5 more to get up to 45. And our denominator stays the same. So we know that 1 2/3 times 3 3/8 equals 5 5/8. And remember, we're going to try to get in the habit of always circling or boxing in our answers just to get us ready for next year. Okay, let's look at this problem. This is a word problem, and sometimes we get scared when we see word problems, but I want you to look at what this was asking. You see a little chart here, and it says jackets per hour for machine A and machine B. A clothing factory has machines that make jackets. The machine operates for 7.5 hours each day. How many jackets can each machine make in one day? Okay, so this is how long they're actually running in the clothing factory. So for machine A, we need to take, they make 2 3/4 jackets an hour. And I'm going to multiply it by how long the machines are operating, which is 7.5 hours. Okay, so remember, you cannot multiply until you've made these improper fractions. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. So that is 11/4 times 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. So that's 15 halves. Okay, now let's look at this. 4 and 15, there's nothing that goes into both 4 and 15 other than 1. And the same thing with 2 and 11. So this is one of those problems where you're going to have to actually multiply this out. Let's do 4 times 2 first. That's a quick one. 4 times 2 is 8. But to do 15 times 11, you're going to have to come over somewhere on your paper and actually work the problem out. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. Don't forget your placeholder. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. Let's add that up. And we see that 15 times 11 is 165. Now, I'm going to erase my work here because remember we said we can't leave those as improper fractions. So to get my answer, I'm going to have to see how many times 8 goes into 165. I know 8 times 2 is 16. 8 does not go into 5, so that's a 0. And there's 5 left over. So 8 goes into 165 20 times with 5 8s left over. So machine A produces 20 and 5/8 jackets per day. Okay? Now, let's look at machine B. I'm going to erase this. Machine B, 3 1/3 times, and these are how many they make per hour, so they make 3 1/3 per hour times 7.5 hours that it's actually running. So we know we have to find, turn these into improper fractions. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 more is 10. So this is 10/3 times 2 times 7 is 14 plus 1 is 15 halves. Now, if you look at this, both of these can reduce. So this is going to be a really easy one. 3 and 15. 3 goes into both of those. 3 goes into 3. 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Look at 10 and 2. 2 goes into 2 and 10. 2 divided by 2 is, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So now let's multiply. We have 5 times 5, which is 25 over 1. So this particular machine can make 25 jackets in the amount of time that it's open each day. Okay, so basically you're taking the same kind of work and you're just multiplying it out to see how many jackets can be made. All right, let's check this one out. Adam had a lump of silly putty that was 4 5/6 inches long. If he stretched it out to 2 3 times its current length, how long would it be? Okay, so it's 4 5/6 inches long times 2 2/3. When you see times, that is your clue that we are multiplying. So let's go ahead and do our changing into an improper fraction. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 5 is 29. So we have 29/6 times 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8/3. All right, 29 is prime. There is nothing that goes into 3 and 29 except for 1, so we can't do anything there. 8 and 6, I know 2 goes into both of those. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Let's see what we come up with here. 3 times 3 is 9. 29 times 4. That's not going to be one that you're probably going to know in your head. So come over to the side and work that out. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 3 is 11. So we have 111 over 9. Remember, we need to leave that as a mixed number. I'm sorry, leave it at, turn it into a mixed number. So we have to say 9 into 111. 9 goes into 11 once. 1 times 9 is 9. 9 goes into 21 2. 2 times 9 is 18. And that leaves us with 3. So we know our final answer, I'm going to bring it down here, is 12, and 3 is my remainder. 9 is my denominator. But 12 and 3/9 is not reduced. When I look at 3/9, I know that 3 goes into 9. So I've got to keep going on this one. So this would equal 12 and 1/3 because you can divide them both by 3. So this is how long the silly putty would be if it started at this amount and stretched it out to 2 2/3 times this amount. Okay? Now, here's another one. A geologist had 2 rocks on a scale that weighed 2.5 pounds together. Rock A was 1/7 of the total weight. How much did rock A weigh? Okay, so if we know they're 2.5 pounds together, and I see this very magic word right here of, which we learned yesterday means to multiply. 2 1/2 times 1/7. Here we have a mixed number multiplying times a fraction. Both have to be fractions, so let's come down below and change this to an improper fraction. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So this would be 5 halves times 1/7. And I'm looking and seeing there's really nothing I can cancel. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 7 is 14. So if they weighed 2.5 pounds together, rock A was 1/7 of the total weight. We know that rock A weighed this much, 5/14 of a pound. Okay? Now, last problem we're going to work together. This problem, I don't want it to scare you. I put a note that I do want you to remember the order of operations. We are inside parentheses, so we obviously do that first. But when I look, it's adding inside the parentheses. And I know when I add, my denominators have to be the same. So I'm going to change this to 1 and some ninths plus 2 and some ninths. We'll put it back inside the parentheses so I remember, times 2 and some eighths, because I know 4 and 8 both go into 8, minus 1 and 1/8. And let me go back over here and fill in my 2 ninths, because that's already there. Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times 3 is, my pen's not wanting to write, 3. Over here, 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. All right, so now we can work what's inside the parentheses. I have 1 plus 2. And notice this was plus and minus, so we need to make sure we're watching the signs. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 ninths plus 3 ninths is 5 ninths. Okay, so we have 3 and 5 ninths times 2 minus 1 is 1. 6 eighths minus 1 eighth is 5 eighths. So we now have the problem in the form that we need it to be in order to multiply. These have to be improper fractions, so let's go ahead and do that. 9 times 3 is 27, plus 5 is 32. So we have 32 ninths times 8 times 1 is 8, plus 5 is 13 eighths. All right, when I look at 9 and 13, 13's prime, so there's nothing that goes into 9 and 13 except for 1. But when I look at 8 and 32, I know 8 goes into both of these numbers. So I'm going to cross cancel. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 32 divided by 8 is 4. Now I'm ready to multiply. 4 times 13, if that's one that you don't know, come over to the side and work it out. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 52. So we have 52 ninths, but remember we don't want to leave it that way. We say 9 goes into 9 goes into 52 5 times. 5 times 9 is 45, and that would leave 7 to get up to 52 ninths. 5 and 7 ninths is your final answer. So see, this took quite a bit of work. We had to add what was in here. We had to subtract what was in here in order to get our multiplication problem. So some of these take a little perseverance as you're working. All right, on your notes page, show to me that you understand how to do this. Obviously, I've chosen all mixed numbers for you to multiply. So you're going to make these mixed numbers into improper fractions, and then you're going to multiply them just like we learned in class when we just multiplied fractions. Do cross-canceling if you can. If you can't, it's just know that it's going to take you a little bit more time. But make sure that you're very careful in your calculations when you're multiplying, when you're dividing, even when you're adding and subtracting. Don't make careless mistakes. Come tomorrow with all of these worked out completely with your answers either circled or boxed. Have a great evening.